Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. Real Estate Coaching Radio is the nation's #1 daily radio show for realtors who demand authentic, real-time coaching. Get ready for fluff-free, unfiltered, full-strength honesty about what's truly working to get you into action, helping others, and making money now in today's real estate market. Now to our hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
I have to say, I think Wednesdays are my favorite coaching days. I'm going to tell you why. Oh, I got to unmute my lovely wife, Julie. I believe. Oh no, you are unmuted. Welcome to the podcast,
I think I am.
Julie.
Yes, thank you.
You are. Julie, can we hear you?
Cool.
Julie, are you on? Are you on, Julie?
Don't even do that. Let's try.
So Wednesdays are my favorite coaching days, and I'm going to tell you why. So I have some of my best clients, personal coaching clients on Wednesdays, and these are folks that have been with us for 4 or 5, sometimes a little bit longer years. We've had coaching clients with us for more than 10 years. One of them's been with us for like 17 years. But this troop of monkeys in particular on Wednesdays, they're fun because they've all been with me in my schedule for about the same amount of time. And to see what they've done in their marketplaces, it's so fascinating. They're in different markets, different price ranges, different ages, just different. But they've all followed the same path with me for the past 3 years, 2 years, 5 years. But they're all and to see them ascending, to see them becoming this vision of themselves. Today, it was wonderful because it was like they're ending the first quarter. They're having their best years ever. They're having the most momentum they've ever experienced before. And I got to ask them these fun questions. I didn't have to grind. I didn't have to make them uncomfortable. I didn't have to force them to do what they didn't want to do, and they didn't want to do it at the highest level because they're living the benefit of having done that for long periods of time. And to walk that path with somebody for a long duration where you have to constantly, with a cattle prod on some coaching calls, zap them in the butt to get them to actually do the right thing, do what they don't want to do, and they don't want to do it at the highest level. That is sometimes what it takes. Yeah, and to see that these guys now, and guys, a lady, and just bear with me here, listeners, to see them now realizing that is the secret to long-term ever-increasing levels of success, is the doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. And to have them take a breath and almost step outside of themselves and look in on what they've created and what they are creating this year, to have them see that it actually was worth all the work, to see them have the new neural pathways. Like I had one this morning where he said, I didn't tell you this, but I've actually lost 20 pounds so far this year. And, I've made these other improvements in my life. It's because he was telling me that he realizes that the doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level applies to every aspect of being a human. And that is so true. Wednesdays are my favorite coaching days, I have to say. So I just want to start out with that.
Definitely.
Julie?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we've got a good crowd. And I think it's great for them to hear each other's stories and inspire each other when they are so different, but they can still say, well, if that guy can do it or if that gal can do it, of course I can do it too. So I think there's a lot of value in hearing other people's success and being exposed to that. So kudos to all of them. I think it's great. And
it is.
Nice lead into our topic as it turns out.
We have this is one of the topics that Julie and I created originally for our book. The Red Book, which is actually going to, per the contract with our new publisher, is going to be out of. You're not going to be able to buy it probably today anymore, because the new book that Julie has been working with her. How many editors did you have working with you? I mean, maybe it isn't something to brag about.
Like 4, I think.
One editor.
Well, but they're very. It's the difference between working with a very professional publisher versus self-publishing, text editing, format editing. Even the index has an editor. I'm like, that's a job, right? Like somebody does that. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. And they're doing a killer job. So they've really helped us out a lot, and I'm excited to launch it.
Yeah, so the new book comes out in, I think, June. And it's in pre-sale right now. You can find it on Amazon. The old book was an international bestseller, over 300 5-star reviews. You could still buy it today. So if you want to buy the old book, but the new book's coming out, I'd strongly suggest all of you go ahead and pre-order it. And because we had a lot of people more or less asking, we did sell a ton of audiobooks too, thousands of audiobooks, but everyone was more or less saying, we want Julie or Tim actually reading the book. So I volunteered Julie.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Of course.
I'll help you here. I'll help you here and there. So Julie is going to do the new audiobook, and so that's going to be coming to your podcast or your what would it be? Where do you buy audiobooks? What's it called? Audible.com. Yeah, probably sometime towards around Christmas. So the audiobook will be out much later in the year, but the actual softcover book is coming out in June. Make sure you grab a copy of that immediately, or at least reserve your copy. And we're expecting this book to sell more than the other one, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because the last chapter in the Red Book was about wealth building, and I'm not going to step on any of our points, Julie, but one of the things that Julie and I have been always focused on, our North Star had always been to get to the point where we were rich. Now, when we were in our formidable years, we've been married for almost 30 years. We got married in our early 20s. We're in our late 40s. So when we got married, we did have goals we set for ourselves. Julie and I did read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Julie and I were very much focused on our futures, and we were abnormal, I realize. But the fact is that we had a goal of being rich where we did not have this definition. I give this definition to you. I wish I would have had it when I was younger. Rich is where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. It's simple. There's no politicizing of it. There's no have and have-nots and 1% and all this other crap. There's no way to look at rich anything other than what I just said. So for some of you, rich is where you're making $5,000 a month passively. Rich for some of you might be $20,000 a month passively, and I say this because you have to see money for what it is. Money's purpose is to give you freedom. That's what all of you want ultimately. When you got into real estate originally, if you would have actually asked yourself when you were sitting in those horrible pre-licensing classes, even if you were doing them online, and someone were to tap you on your shoulder and say, why are you suffering through all this? You would probably break it down to these three reasons: because you don't want to have a boss, because you don't want to have anyone set income caps on you, and because you want to have a sense of freedom. Well, it is easy to accomplish all three of those goals in your head, at least. You don't have to have a boss, no one telling you what to do. You have a sense of freedom for the same particular reason. But the thing that very few people ever do is create financial freedom, because it's not clear how. Because, first of all, when asking a group of people, as we do sometimes, what does it mean to be rich, you'll hear people throwing out arbitrary large sums of money, $10 million, $20 million. Well, I'll challenge your thinking with this thought. If you had $1 million, if you had $1 million in cash and you invested it fairly conservatively, before taxes, the most money you're going to make from that is about $50,000 per year. And I'm just giving you these little thoughts as we approach our points here. If you had a bunch of paid-off properties, let's say your goal was to make $50,000 per year. Let's just say that's your basis per year. Now, I realize a lot of you it's significantly more than that. But let's just say, just use numbers that are nice and easy. So you'd have to have $1 million in cash, which most of you will never have $1 million in cash. That's just a simple fact. Okay? And so how do you go about having $1 million in cash? Think about how much money you'd have to earn after taxes. Now, maybe through your 401s and your retirement accounts, when you're old and gray, you'll have that amount of money accumulated, and then you'll live off, the dividends. You'll live off. I get it, okay? So some of you are on that path. So the path that most real estate people, at least in their heads, tell them they're going to choose is they're going to go and buy investment properties. And they're going to hopefully have those investment properties paid off by the time they're old and gray, and they're going to live off the cash flow. Or some people do a little bit of both. So those have been the two clear paths forward for anybody, normal people really, but real estate people specifically, to ever have a sense of being rich. Now, I want to be very clear. Rich is where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. Having a real estate brokerage or having a real estate team does not qualify. Right, and I'll explain to you why in a second. But the moral of the story is I'm talking about hypothetically passive investments. Now, I also want to predicate something. There is no such thing as a passive investment. That's a lie. I say passive investments just so conceptually you can understand. It's the difference between receiving money digitally or in the form of a check versus, say, going out and actually, listing a house and selling it. You got the commission from the selling of the house from your actual efforts. Efforts equaled results. Whereas a check you get off, say, a paid-off rental property, that's relatively passive, except for the fact that maybe there's a repair that needs to be done on the property. Maybe the tenant was late. But it's less active than, let's say, going out and listing a house and earning a commission. I think everyone intellectually understands what I'm saying. But do understand in your head that the idea that there's true passive income is a myth. Even if you have money managers managing your money, you need to manage your money managers. Otherwise, they're going to steal from you. They're going to be complacent. They're not going to necessarily work as hard as they otherwise could. So to think there's anything such as passive income isn't just wash that from your mind. But I do think that all of you will agree the real driving force behind all the activities you do in life is the idea that one day you can be free. Now, free from the worry about money, free from having to actually go out and hustle every day in order to pay bills, free from ever having to stress over whether or not you're going to have enough money to pay for your vacations or you're going to have enough money to pay off your credit card every month, or free from having to worry about health bills or college tuitions or going to Disneyland. When you achieve your goal, and all of you will agree that once you get to the sense of being rich, where your money's working for you, no longer have to work for your money, where you have enough money coming in every month that you don't actually have to worry anymore, that you know those things will just happen almost on autopilot, that's when you're free. I think intellectually you guys can all be in alignment with what I'm saying. It is a mythical thing for most people to ever experience anything like what I've just described, but I'm going to tell you how to do it. And Julie and I are going to tell you how to do it over the next 3 or 4 podcasts. And we're going to tell you an exact roadmap how to do it. We're going to tell you the pluses and minuses of every decision, because there's lots of turns in the road that you're going to have to face. We're going to give you actual stories and examples of coaching clients we've helped accomplish it, because our approach to coaching and our assumption from being real estate coaches is that you didn't get into real estate to form a big team. You didn't get into real estate to be famous. You didn't get into real estate for ego gratification. You didn't get into real estate to discover your big why. You didn't get into real estate to become a big brand. You didn't get into real estate to become a social media rock star. Yes, I'm making fun of our competitors. You got into real estate because you wanted to be financially free. You wanted to be able to wake up in the morning, and you wanted to basically not have to have the omnipresent stress of having to go out and hustle for money. Julie, am I hitting all the nails on the head with this?
Absolutely.
The ramp up? Yes.
Well,
what are you thinking as I was doing my little ramp up?
Well, how many of our listeners have gotten out of touch with those feelings? Now, if you just got your license, you're real clear on all this. Probably. If you're a year in, maybe you're still feeling it. But if you've been at it for a while, it's fairly easy to get out of touch, to get distracted by easy buttons, by pretty shiny things, by team building, and everything else that you mentioned. But why did you get into this in the first place? It all boils down to freedom. So I think you're very spot on about that. And you were talking about Wednesday being your favorite day because we've got all these up-and-coming rising stars and coaching clients. So once they're there, it's almost like a hard reset. You know, you've got certain things that are initial, very logical goals. And we're going to walk them through the steps. But the first point in our talk in this podcast is, deep down, why did you decide to get into this? And most people will say, well, they didn't want to have a boss. Well, all right, check. You wanted to be in control of your schedule. And I hesitate to say check on that, but versus somebody else. We'll leave it at that. You wanted to, quote, own your own business. The romantic notion of that self-made man or woman appeals to you. That's a freedom thought. You wanted to be rich. So we've got to work on that, having a check mark after it. And that brings us to the second point, which you've got to be clear on. So a lot of these are sort of big mindset points. Number 2, what is your product? When we talk about this at a live event, everybody says, happy customers or a job well done. It's not about the money. Okay, well, let's just clear the air on that one. The actual answer to what is your product is profit. With that profit, you become debt-free. You buy investments that cover your personal overhead. Thus, you are no longer working for money. Your money is working for you. You have to have the profit to get the freedom. You can't skip steps. Make sense?
That is, Julie, that is such an incredibly important point. I hope all of you never forget that. That is so incredibly important. I wish that we would have known that, my dear, when you and I were, much, much younger. Because we did is we forced ourselves to continue to buy rental properties, which, by the way, I'm not 100% convinced is the modern best way to become rich. And we're going to talk about that on this podcast series we're doing. It has been the traditional path forward for normal people like Julie and I and for all of you, but I assure you that there's better, perhaps, alternatives that we're going to share with you on upcoming podcasts, part 3 or 4 probably of this series. This is one of our favorite things to talk about, by the way. So, but Julie's point there, you got to be really clear about that. Your product is not anything other than profit. And I realize that I know because we've been in front of groups of agents where we've asked that question, and unless they're podcast listeners, they never give the right answer because they always say people in our industry, business in general, have been brainwashed into thinking that you have to have some sort of touchy-feely, mindset-y type answer. Otherwise, you're some kind of evil capitalist bastard. Or I don't really know why, truthfully, listeners, that people don't get the fact that their product is profit. If you're running a real estate brokerage, if you're running a real estate team, if you want to call it that, if you're running an individual practice, you're just an individual agent. If you're not producing ample amounts of profit, then you do not have a business. You're running a nonprofit, which means that you will never be rich because with that profit is how you ultimately, essentially make it so that your money works for you. You no longer have to work for your money. But I have had thousands of coaching calls where people will make terrible business decisions where they'll rationalize doing dumb shit, branding mostly, building teams mostly, now expansion teams, all this dumb shit at the idea that, look, I know I'm going not to take profit this year because I'm going to get it next year. Oh, didn't happen next year. I'm going to get it the next year. Oh, crap, a recession. Ain't happening that year. You guys get the point? You have to take profit off the top of every single check, no matter how small it is, every single time. Julie?
Yes, every single time. Even if you don't think you can afford to pay yourself, think about what a crazy statement that even is. Got to pay yourself first so that you can get that freedom. So back to our definition of what is rich. Does selling real estate make you rich? Not by itself. The first hard lesson is that the selling of the real estate isn't what makes you rich. Secondly, not so hard lesson is that everybody can be rich. It's not hard provided that you focus on profit as your product, as we said. Point number 4 leads us right to this. What are all of the profit killers in your business? Why do you allow yourself to be seduced by profit-killing easy buttons? Ask yourself, is your desire for things to be easy, in other words, avoiding doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level, in spite of the fact that you know that that's what leads to profitability, is your desire for things to be easy greater than your desire to be rich and free? That's a pretty serious introspection question. The answer is clearly yes for many of you. Otherwise, companies like Zillow and others wouldn't be in business because they are the definition of the easy button play. And all of you would be rich versus Zillow being the ones that are taking the money, and again, and others. So ask yourself that question. Which is stronger? Yesterday we talked about which wolf you're feeding, the good wolf or the evil wolf. Which one is it? So why is that ringing? Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, so which wolf are you feeding? Are you feeding the easy button wolf that's eventually going to bite you? Or are you feeding your rich and free wolf, the point that you got into real estate in the first place? So we will get into next the no BS phases of actual wealth building. There are phases to this. Just like when we present phases of mastery, where we talk about first you're in formulation where you're getting ready to get started, then you're in concentration where you're learning how to do the work and doing the work. And once you get good at that and you don't give up on it, you lead to momentum. And momentum is where the profit is. And then you lead to breakthrough. People try to skip to concentration and momentum without doing any formulation. Really, they try to skip to the momentum, and they don't learn the skills. That's why some of you guys build teams before you actually know how to transaction coordinate. Go ahead, sorry.
I know I can hear in your voice you're distracted, my dear. So if you need to take care of whatever, you can.
Nope,
if that was
I'm
somebody
good.
from Zoe's school and you need to deal with it, go deal with it. But what she was just talking about with the levels of learning, it's different, called different things.
Mastery.
But levels of mastery. If you want to learn more about what she was just talking about, we've done a past podcast on that. Just go to iTunes or go to timandjulieharris.com. And on timandjulieharris.com, it's actually easier to search for past podcasts and just put in either levels of learning or levels of mastery. I've called it both things. But it is very interesting to learn where you actually are on the levels. And you know what, Julie, I have neglected and I just got barked at. If you guys need a free coaching call, which I know all of you do, you need to text the word Harris, Harris, to 31996. Text the word Harris to 31996. And yes, to the person that just asked, we are still giving away the books, Real Estate Treasure Map and Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich for real estate actually is, it's built on Think and Grow Rich, the public domain of his book, and you definitely want to get that. It's been inspirational for Julie and I forever. We literally reread the book every single year. A lot of people throw it in the basket of a mindset book. This is Napoleon Hill's book, but the reality of it is it's way more than mindset. It's about essentially how to apply high-level thinking to your life. It's where a lot of our I would say Think and Grow Rich was one of the biggest reasons why our first year in business, over 20 years ago, we sold over 100 houses and broke every record for first-year sales that has never been broken since. We sold and put in contract over 100 homes. And I would say a lot of it has to do with what we learned in Think and Grow Rich. So we are going to give that book to you for free. Our version of it's Think and Grow Rich for Real Estate. We add a lot of real estate information. All you've got to do to get that book for free is text the word Harris, Harris, to 31996. Text the word Harris, Harris, to 31996. Julie?
Yes. So on to our phases. There will not be any skipping of phases, or you won't get to that profit, and without the profit, you have no freedom. So phase one, point number one, recognize and embrace that profit is your product. Point number two, never buy anything that is an easy button. Don't be seduced into poverty. Let that settle in for a second. Point number three, accept that you must
Julie,
be a listing agent. Yes.
Julie, don't blaze, sister. So how does someone know if it's an easy button or not?
Well, that's a good question. Let's actually define that. So what defines an easy button? Well, I mean, there's lots of ways to look at it. One of the things that comes to my mind is anytime anybody is selling you something like impressions, is an impression a client, a prospect, a customer? What is that? Is that somebody just looking at a picture online? What does that really do for you? When they start speaking in hieroglyphs, I think that's an early warning sign. When the pitch is actually that you'll never have to prospect again or things of that nature, we'll do it all for you. All of your lead generation woes are over.
So what are the things that you're trying to avoid the most in your business? And have you ever noticed that the easy button companies are all essentially building excuses for you not to do those things? And Julie just touched on pretty much all of them. So anything that has to do with proactive lead generation, where you're going to have to pick up the phone and know what to say and how to say it, anything that's going to involve essentially you getting or hearing the opportunity or being in the position to hear the word no. If you're not hearing the word no at least 5 times a day or putting yourself in the position to hear the word no at least 5 times a day, it's one of our rules. You're not doing your job every day. That's something you need to think about, because what most of you do is, for some reason, hearing the word no to you, in your mind at least, your ego is telling you that it's like the most devastating thing that could ever possibly happen, you know? And so all these companies have rushed in to make it so you never actually have to hear, or your ego is convincing you, go buy buyer leads so you never actually have to hear the word no. But what you've done is you've sold your future out of short-term convenience. You've actually given away your potentiality because you were so fearful or lazy and you didn't want to actually learn how to have really powerful sales skills. That's the truth. It's the same reason. There's so many businesses nowadays that have been built on the idea that people are lazy. And they're, some of them, very successful. Zillow only exists because agents are lazy. Right. That's it. Okay, where's Zillow's revenue come from? Agents buying impressions, agents buying buyer leads. That's where it comes from. It's because agents are lazy. They don't want to do it themselves. Hold on, Tim. No. You don't understand. I'm a business owner, and my time is better spent. And then here's what I say to that, because we hear that all the time. Let's see your P&L. Let's see what your profit was. Do you notice how you're making no profit? Do you notice how you've been in the business for a decade or more and you have nothing to really show for it? Do you notice how you have no assets, how you're not any closer to being rich than you were when you got in the business? It's because you are refusing to learn how to do the real work in the business. The real work in the business, the primary job of any sales professional in any industry is proactive lead generation. And you're avoiding it, and you know it. And you're going to, as long as you continue to avoid it, your situation is never going to improve financially, ever. There is no easy button widget. There is no new Facebook ad. There's no Instagram ad. There's no anything that's going to ever replace proactive lead generation. So that's really where you need to have a real true drill down and be honest with yourself that if you're actually not producing profit in your business, it's because you're avoiding the actual work. You have yet to get into you've actually yet to learn how to be a successful real estate agent. And I don't care how many deals you've fallen into or how long you've been in the business or how many awards you've gotten. You're the member of the $5 million club, but you've been in the business for 50 years. The $5 million club's a cumulative of all your sales. Okay? Let's stop lying to each other. Let's stop bullshitting about what you do and don't know and own it, right? I mean, if you're going to change, you got to start with, okay, well, why is it that my financial situation isn't changing? It's because I'm not becoming the person that I need to be so that I can earn the new financial reality that I'm hoping to have for myself. That's why, because you haven't yet accepted that there's a direct relationship between the number of people that you help accomplish their goals and the number of goals and the quality of life that you'll experience. They're directly related. These things are directly related. Being successful, being financially free, being rich is not complicated. It is actually easy. It's your ego and your brain that wants to. It's all these people selling you lies, basically, that wants it to be complicated. Oh, you need a 7-step lead follow-up program and a 14-step CRM, and you need a fancy brand. Oh, you need a team. You need all this crap. No, you don't. Actually, you don't need any of it. You don't. And you need to have the business maturity to realize they're trying to seduce you into something that's actually not the best thing for you, assuming your goal is to be rich where your money works for you and you no longer work for your money. You need to understand the ramifications of the decisions that you make, especially in your formidable years in real estate. As soon as you hit that easy button, what you've done is you just procrastinated actually ever having to learn the skill of being a proactive lead generator, and many of you never will. And you're always going to be wondering, why is it that I never was really, truly successful in real estate? It's because you never were truly willing to do the real work. That's why. I know that's hard to hear, but aren't you right? Aren't you glad that someone is telling you the truth finally, opposed to trying to placate your ego, opposed to worrying about whether you're being offended? You need to be offended. You need to be offended by yourself. You need to be offended by the people who have lied to you about what it takes to be successful. You know if you want to lose weight and get in shape, you know what you have to do. If you don't, I mean, there's so much information out there. You know what it takes to actually accumulate money, but what do? You have a choice between learning how to do what you don't want to do and you don't want to do at the highest level, or buying buyer leads. Obviously, most of you buy buyer leads, don't you? So you are consciously, this isn't being done to you. You're doing it yourself. You're making these decisions yourself. Julie, does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, here's the problem is that it's a leap for some of them to own that it's not being done to you, that it's not your broker's fault, your market's fault, the market's fault. It's your fault. You've got to own it. We've done podcasts on that. Whatever position you are in life is because you caused that. For some of you, that's fantastic because you've been so proactive and you're so grateful and you're really clear on this. But for others of you, it's like it's not going to happen for you today because market conditions aren't right or the sun isn't shining or what have you. So I think that this is a major point, and that's why we're taking a lot of time on this Wealth Creation Phases podcast. I mean, it shouldn't be something that takes 20 minutes to present. There's a lot more to it than that, and when we have big topics like this, we like to start in your head, because if you don't have all of the marbles sorted out in your head first, none of the rest will ever happen. And on that note, I'm going to leave you to close because I've got to get to Premiere while these guys are creating their profitability. So I will see you.
That's right. Well, so yes, absolutely. So what were the takeaways from today's podcast? Number one, that your product is profit. Because if you don't have profit, everything we're going to present to you going forward is going to be irrelevant because you're not going to have any free money to do anything with, right? So if you're not making profit, if you're essentially not realizing that the absolute litmus test of how effective you are as a business owner is the amount of profit you make, if you're not willing to accept that, then essentially all the other things that come from the next 2 or 3 podcasts are going to fall on deaf ears because you're not going to be able to do it. We're going to tell you things to do with money, which will result in you moving a step forward to being rich where your money works for you. You no longer work for your money. But you have to have profit to do it. It doesn't just happen magically. You have to make the profit happen. You have to learn the discipline of saying no to easy button ideas. And I shared this with you guys. I try to give this, this is the practical way of ultimately knowing whether something's an easy button idea. Ask yourself when you're reading about something, when you're thinking about doing something, does it involve your credit card? Because if it involves your credit card, you're probably reaching for the easy button. Next thing, is it going to somehow, in your mind at least, make it so you don't have to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level? So is this thing that you're thinking about doing going to somehow in your mind make it so you don't have to put yourself in a position to hear the word no personally? That is an easy button idea for sure. So you need to remember those 2 points. That is the first step, because if you cannot control A, your earning, but B, your spending, you're not going to have any profit. If you do not have any profit, you're not going to have any money to build wealth, and you're always going to be poor. And now, by poor, you might have a nice middle-class lifestyle, and God bless you. That's fantastic. But if you have a couple crappy months and your family's dependent on your commissions, you're out. And it's horrible because I don't want to have that happen to any of you. You know it's true. So listen, this topic is really important to us because this is one of those things that, again, Julie and I, none of this stuff in the order in which we're presenting it, we heard anyone else ever present. We had to put these things together, frankly, through basically long hours of coaching, long hours of reading, long hours of basically people taking the time to maybe share with us their personal experiences, mentors and whatnot. So everything that we're going to be sharing with you and everything we shared with you so far from this wealth building podcast, this is the no BS approach to it. This is the shortest, quickest, most, I'm not going to say risk-free, because the risk is that if you're not willing to do what you don't want to do and you don't want to do it at the highest level, it won't work because you have to actually do the work. That's the truth. If you guys need me for anything, it's tim@timandjulieharris.com or julie@timandjulieharris.com. And remember, if you want the free books, just text the word Harris, Harris, to 31996. Part 2 of the No BS Stages to Building Massive Wealth is tomorrow. Stay tuned. Have a fantastic day.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.